Across the aisle, Trevor whispered something to Amber that made her giggle. The sound echoed through the quiet room like nails on a chalkboard. Judge Henderson adjusted his glasses. The dissolution of marriage between Trevor Mitchell and Naomi Mitchell is hereby granted. All terms of the settlement have been agreed upon and are final. Trevor's lawyer smiled. Trevor himself looked almost bored, like this was just another appointment. Amber squeezed his hand, her long red nails digging into his palm. She wore the diamond bracelet he'd bought with their joint credit card, the one Naomi had paid off every month for 3 years. Naomi signed the final papers without hesitation. Her signature was neat, practiced. She'd been preparing for this moment for 6 months. The court clerk collected the documents and handed copies to both attorneys. "You're free to go," the judge said. Naomi stood. She wore a simple black dress and heels that made her 5'7" frame even more imposing. Her natural hair was pulled back in a sleek bun. She looked like she was going to a business meeting, not ending a 7-year marriage. She walked toward the exit without looking back. Not at Trevor. Not at Amber. Not at the courtroom where she just legally ended the biggest mistake of her life. "Naomi, wait." Trevor called after her. She didn't stop. Outside the courthouse, the afternoon sun was bright and unforgiving. Naomi descended the stone steps with measured confidence. Trevor and Amber followed her out, their footsteps quick and eager. "Naomi, come on," Trevor said, jogging to catch up. "We should talk about logistics. The house, the utilities, all that." Naomi reached the sidewalk and stopped. For a moment, Trevor thought she might actually engage. Amber stood beside him, her arm linked through his, her expression smug. "You're going to be okay, right?" Amber asked, her voice dripping with fake concern. "I mean, financially?" Trevor said, "You might struggle on your own." Naomi looked at Amber for the first time since entering the courthouse. Her gaze was cool, almost clinical. Then she looked at Trevor. His hair was freshly cut. His suit was new, another purchase on the credit card she'd paid off. He still had that same cocky smile he'd worn when they first met. She didn't say a word. A black limousine turned the corner and pulled up to the curb directly in front of her. It was sleek and expensive, with tinted windows so dark you couldn't see inside. The chrome detailing gleamed in the sunlight. Trevor's smile faltered. "What's this?" A driver stepped out from the front seat. He was a tall black man in his 50s, wearing a perfectly tailored charcoal suit and white gloves. He walked around the car with practiced grace and opened the rear passenger door. "Miss Hartley," he said with a slight bow. Naomi smiled, a real smile, warm and genuine. "Thank you, Bernard." She slid into the back seat without hesitation. Through the open door, Trevor caught a glimpse of cream leather interior, polished wood panels, and a bottle of champagne resting in an ice bucket. Someone was already inside, a man in an expensive suit, his face partially hidden in shadow. Bernard closed the door with a solid, final thud. He returned to the driver's seat, and the limousine pulled away from the curb smoothly, silently. Trevor stood frozen on the courthouse steps. Amber's mouth hung open. "Who the hell was that?" Amber asked. Trevor didn't answer. He couldn't. He watched the limousine disappear down the street, his mind racing. Naomi had never mentioned knowing anyone who rode in cars like that. She'd never mentioned having money. She'd always been so careful with finances, always talking about budgets and savings. "Trevor?" Amber tugged on his sleeve. "Who was that man in the car?" "I don't know," Trevor said quietly. For the first time since he'd started his affair, a cold feeling of dread settled in his stomach. Naomi had walked away from their marriage like it was nothing. No tears. No anger. No begging. And now she was riding away in a limousine that probably cost more than his yearly salary. "Maybe it's just a friend giving her a ride," Amber said, but her voice was uncertain. Trevor's phone buzzed. A text from his credit card company, payment overdue. $4,200 balance. He'd been counting on Naomi to pay it off like she always did. She always handled their finances, always made sure everything was covered. "Come on," Amber said, pulling him toward her beat-up Honda Civic in the parking lot. "Let's go celebrate. We're finally free." But Trevor couldn't shake the image of Naomi sliding into that limousine like she owned it. Like she belonged there. Like she'd been waiting for this moment all along. What did he really know about his ex-wife? And what had he just lost? 3 years before the divorce, Naomi sat in her grandmother's hospital room, holding the old woman's frail hand. Dorothy Hartley had lived 93 years with dignity and grace. Now, in her final hours, she wanted to make sure her granddaughter understood what was coming. "The trust fund," Dorothy whispered, her voice weak but clear. "You can access it when you turn 30. $12 million. But Naomi, you listen to me. Naomi leaned closer. I'm listening, Grandma. Don't tell that husband of yours. Not yet. I don't trust him. Grandma, Trevor's a good man. He married you without asking about your family. He doesn't know the Hartley name means anything. That tells me he doesn't care about where you come from. Dorothy squeezed her granddaughter's hand with surprising strength. Promise me you'll wait. See who he really is before you share this with him. Naomi promised, though at the time she thought her grandmother was being paranoid. Dorothy died that night. At the funeral, Trevor complained about taking time off work. He didn't understand why Naomi needed a full week to grieve. He'd never met Dorothy, always had some excuse when Naomi suggested visits. The reading of the will happened on a Tuesday. Naomi went alone, telling Trevor it was just formalities. The lawyer, an elderly man named Mr. Pemberton, laid out everything in his office. Your grandmother's estate is quite substantial, he said, sliding papers across his desk. The primary asset is a trust fund established in 1975. Current value, $12,400,000. You can access it now that you're 30. Naomi's hands trembled. 12 million? Your grandmother was very wise with investments. The Hartley family made their fortune in textiles and real estate in the 1920s. Your grandmother preserved and grew that wealth carefully. Mr. Pemberton folded his hands. She left specific instructions. She wanted you to be independent before accessing these funds. She wanted you to know your own strength first. Naomi thought about Trevor at home, probably playing video games, completely unaware that his wife had just inherited more money than he'd make in 3 lifetimes. What should I do? She asked. That's entirely up to you, Mr. Pemberton said. But your grandmother also left advice. She said to invest in real estate. Property can't lie to you, she said. It can't cheat on you. It's solid ground beneath your feet. Naomi left the lawyer's office with a certified check and a head full of thoughts. She drove home slowly, trying to process everything. $12 million. Financial freedom. The ability to do anything she wanted. She pulled into the driveway of their modest 3-bedroom house. Trevor's car was already there. She sat in her vehicle for a long moment, staring at their home. They'd been married for 4 years. They were comfortable, happy enough. Trevor worked in sales for a medical supply company. She was a corporate accountant at a mid-sized firm. They had plans to start a family soon. Inside, Trevor was on the couch with a beer watching a basketball game. Hey babe, he said without looking away from the screen. How'd it go? Fine, Naomi said. Just paperwork stuff. Your grandma leave you anything good? Maybe some jewelry you could sell? Naomi's stomach tightened. Just some personal items. Photo albums, her wedding ring. That's it? I thought rich old ladies always had money hidden somewhere. Trevor laughed. Guess not, huh? Naomi went to their bedroom and sat on the bed. She thought about her grandmother's warning. She thought about how Trevor had just assumed there was no money. She thought about how quickly he'd suggested selling jewelry. She opened her laptop and started researching real estate investment strategies. By midnight, she'd found 3 apartment buildings for sale in the city. By the end of the week, she'd hired a financial advisor and a real estate attorney, both sworn to confidentiality. She told Trevor she was working late more often. Really, she was viewing properties, meeting with contractors, learning the business. She created an LLC under her grandmother's maiden name, Hartley Holdings. All correspondence went to a P.O. box Trevor didn't know about. 6 months after her grandmother's death, Naomi purchased her first apartment building. 15 units, fully rented, steady income. Trevor never knew. She kept their joint checking account normal, contributing her regular paycheck. The real money stayed separate, growing, building something Trevor couldn't see. At night, she lay beside her husband and wondered if her grandmother had been right to warn her. Trevor seemed fine. He wasn't perfect, but who was? He forgot anniversaries sometimes and didn't help much around the house, but he wasn't cruel. He was just ordinary. Then again, Dorothy Hartley hadn't built a fortune by trusting ordinary men. Naomi decided to wait and watch. If Trevor was the man she thought he was, she'd eventually share everything. If not, well, she'd have options. She never imagined she'd need those options so soon. 6 months before the divorce, Naomi noticed the changes. Trevor started showering the moment he got home from work instead of collapsing on the couch like usual. He bought new cologne, something expensive she didn't recognize. He joined a gym and went religiously every evening, even though he'd always said working out was boring. I just want to get healthier, he said when she asked about the sudden fitness obsession. We're not getting any younger. But he didn't invite her to join him. and he started locking his phone. Naomi had been managing their finances for years, so she reviewed their credit card statements like always. In March, she noticed charges at restaurants she'd never been to. A florist, a hotel in the downtown district. On a Tuesday afternoon when Trevor said he was at a work conference. Her hands shook as she stared at the hotel charge. $287 for a weekday afternoon. No conference would meet at that hotel. It was the kind of place people went for privacy. She wanted to be wrong. She wanted there to be an explanation. So she said nothing and paid the bill like always. But she started paying attention. Trevor's phone buzzed constantly. He'd grab it quickly, read messages with a little smile, then delete them. When Naomi walked into a room, he'd flip his phone face down. At night, he'd take it to the bathroom when he showered. "Who keeps texting you?" she asked one evening. "Just work stuff," he said casually. "You know how it is." But Naomi did know. She worked in corporate accounting. Work emails didn't make people smile like that. Work texts didn't need to be hidden. She gave him chances to tell the truth. She asked about his day, his coworkers, his projects. He lied smoothly every time. The lies came so easily that Naomi realized this wasn't new. He'd probably been lying about small things for years and she just never noticed. On a Wednesday in April, Naomi made a decision. She called a private investigator named Jerome Harris. He came recommended by Patricia Okonkwo, the divorce attorney Naomi had consulted months earlier when she was setting up her business LLC. Jerome was a former police detective, now in his 60s, with gray hair and kind eyes. They met at a coffee shop far from Naomi's neighborhood. "I need to know if my husband is cheating," Naomi said quietly. Jerome didn't judge. He'd heard it 1,000 times before. "Give me 2 weeks. I'll find out everything." He didn't need 2 weeks. He needed 5 days. Jerome called Naomi at work on a Monday morning. "Can you meet me this afternoon? I have what you need." They met at the same coffee shop. Jerome slid a manila folder across the table. Naomi's heart pounded as she opened it. Photos. Dozens of them. Trevor and a woman with long blonde hair and too much makeup. Kissing in a parking lot. Holding hands at a restaurant. Entering that same hotel. 3 different visits captured on camera. "Her name is Amber Rodriguez," Jerome said gently. "She's a receptionist at your husband's company. They've been seeing each other for about 8 months based on what I could track." 8 months. Naomi's vision blurred. "There's more," Jerome said. He slid another stack of papers across the table. "These are his credit card statements for the past year. I have a contact who could access them. That bracelet she's wearing in the photos? $1,500. The perfume? $300. Lingerie purchases, dinner dates, weekend trips, all on your joint credit card." Naomi did the math in her head. Trevor had spent over $20,000 on his affair. Money she had earned and paid off every month while he bought gifts for another woman. "Here's the text message logs," Jerome continued. "My contact pulled them from the phone company. You'll want to read these when you're alone." Naomi took the folder home that night after Trevor left for his gym session. She sat at the kitchen table and read every message. The things they said about her made her stomach turn. Trevor called her boring, uptight, too focused on work. Amber called her the obstacle and the wife. They joked about how clueless Naomi was, how she had no idea what was happening right under her nose. In one message Trevor wrote, "She'll be devastated when I leave her. But honestly, I can't wait to be free." Amber replied, "She'll probably beg you to stay. They always do." Naomi closed the folder. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She felt something colder than anger settle in her bones. They thought she'd beg. They thought she'd be devastated. They thought she needed Trevor. They had no idea who she really was. Naomi opened her laptop and reviewed her real estate portfolio. 3 apartment buildings now worth a combined $18 million. Monthly rental income, $95,000. Her trust fund had grown to $14 million through careful investments. She pulled up her bank account statements. Her personal wealth, hidden from Trevor this entire marriage, totaled $32 million. Naomi picked up her phone and called Patricia Okonkwo. "I'm ready to file," she said. "And I want him to get nothing." While Trevor continued his affair, believing Naomi was clueless, she built an empire in the shadows. Every evening when Trevor left for the gym, Naomi attended property viewings, contractor meetings, and investment consultations. She told Trevor she was working late on a big project at her accounting firm. He barely listened when she talked about work anyway. By July, Hartley Holdings owned 5 properties, 3 apartment buildings, 1 commercial office space, and a small shopping plaza. Her property manager, a sharp woman named Simone Crawford, handled the day-to-day operations while Naomi focused on acquisitions and strategy. "You have an eye for undervalued assets," Simone told her during one of their weekly meetings. "These properties are going to triple in value over the next 5 years." Naomi smiled. "My grandmother taught me that land and buildings don't lie. They're solid." "Unlike some people," Simone said, glancing at the photo on Naomi's phone screen. Her wallpaper still showed her and Trevor from their wedding day. Naomi had told Simone about the affair. She had to tell someone, and Simone had proven trustworthy. The older woman had been through her own divorce years ago. "When are you going to confront him?" Simone asked. "When everything is in place," Naomi said. "I won't give him a chance to hide assets or claim he deserves any of this. I need my legal protection airtight." That's when Naomi intensified her work with Patricia Okonkwo. The attorney was a powerhouse, a Nigerian immigrant who'd built one of the most successful family law practices in the state. She wore bold colors and spoke with absolute confidence. "Your prenuptial agreement is your shield," Patricia explained, reviewing the document Trevor had insisted they sign before marriage. "He wanted to protect his assets in case you made more money than him. Ironic, isn't it?" "Very," Naomi said. "Everything you inherited or earned separately stays separate. He gets nothing from Hartley Holdings. The house you're living in, you've been paying the mortgage from a separate account, correct?" "For the past 2 years, yes. I diverted funds from my real estate income to cover it. Trevor thinks his paychecks are covering it, but I've been depositing his contributions into a savings account he doesn't know about." Patricia grinned. "That house is yours then. He'll have to move out." They spent weeks preparing. Patricia gathered all the evidence of Trevor's affair, his financial irresponsibility, and his violations of their prenuptial agreement. Jerome provided additional documentation, hotel receipts, restaurant bills, even a recording of Trevor telling a coworker about his plans to divorce Naomi, "Once I figure out how to keep the house." In August, Naomi purchased her 6th property, a luxury apartment building with a penthouse unit. She had the penthouse furnished in secret. Custom furniture, modern art, a kitchen with top-of-the-line appliances. It was her escape plan, ready when she needed it. Trevor noticed nothing. He was too busy with Amber. Naomi watched him lie to her every day. He'd kiss her goodbye in the morning, tell her he loved her, then spend his lunch break texting his mistress. She saw everything now, every deception, every fake smile. "Doesn't it hurt?" Simone asked during one of their meetings. "Living with him while knowing?" "No," Naomi said honestly. "I stopped loving him the moment I read those text messages. Now he's just a problem I'm solving." By September, Naomi's portfolio was worth $38 million. Her monthly income from rent exceeded $200,000. She'd also started a charitable foundation in her grandmother's name, planning to fund educational programs for young women. Trevor came home one night bragging about a bonus at work. $5,000, baby. We should take a trip or something." Naomi smiled. "That's great, honey." She'd made $5,000 that afternoon in rental income alone. But she let him have his moment. "I'm thinking we should start trying for a baby soon," Trevor said, sitting beside her on the couch. "We're not getting younger." Naomi's stomach turned. He was planning a future with her while sleeping with Amber. The audacity was almost impressive. "Let's wait a bit longer," she said carefully. "I want to make sure we're really ready." Sure, Trevor said, already distracted by his phone. Another text from Amber, no doubt. That night, Naomi lay awake beside her sleeping husband. She felt no sadness anymore, just determination. October arrived with cooler weather. Naomi scheduled the confrontation for a Sunday evening. Everything was ready, the divorce papers prepared, her new penthouse furnished, her bank account separated, her evidence organized. She'd given Trevor 7 years of her life. 7 years of loyalty, of paying bills he didn't contribute to, of building a home while he tore it apart behind her back. Now she was taking back her power. And Trevor had no idea what was coming. The Sunday evening Naomi had chosen was unremarkable, cool October air, quiet neighborhood, nothing special. Trevor was in the living room watching football, a beer in hand, completely relaxed. Naomi walked in and turned off the television. "Hey," Trevor protested. "The game's on." "We need to talk," Naomi said. She placed the manila folder on the coffee table between them. Trevor's expression shifted from annoyance to confusion. "What's this about?" "Open it." He reached for the folder slowly like it might bite him. Inside were the photos. Him and Amber kissing, holding hands, entering hotels. His face went pale. Naomi, I can explain. Don't. Her voice was calm, almost detached. There's more. She pulled out the credit card statements with charges highlighted in yellow. Every gift, every dinner, every hotel room. $23,000 over 8 months. The text messages are in there too, she continued. All the times you called me boring. All the times you and Amber laughed about how clueless I was. All your plans to leave me once you figured out how to keep the house. Trevor's hands shook as he flipped through the evidence. Baby, listen, it's not what it looks like. It's exactly what it looks like. He stood up, his shock turning to anger. You had me followed? You invaded my privacy? You used our money to buy gifts for your mistress. You lied to me every single day. But sure, let's talk about privacy. Trevor ran his hands through his hair. His phone buzzed on the coffee table. Amber's name flashed on the screen. He ignored it. Okay, yes, I made mistakes, he said, switching tactics. But we can work through this. Marriage counseling, whatever you want. I'll end things with her right now. I want a divorce. The words hung in the air. Trevor stared at her like she'd spoken a foreign language. You don't mean that, he said. I've already filed the papers. You'll be served tomorrow at work. Trevor's face turned red. You can't just, Naomi, be realistic. You can't afford this house on your own. Your job doesn't pay that well. You need me. Naomi almost laughed. Do I? Yeah, you do. Who's going to help with bills? Who's going to? He gestured around their home. You think you can maintain all this alone? You're going to struggle and you'll come crawling back. I won't. You will, Trevor said, his voice cruel now. And I might not take you back. You're not exactly a prize, Naomi. You're 32, you work all the time, you're boring as hell. Amber's fun. She's exciting. She actually wants to spend time with me. Then go be with her. Maybe I will. Trevor grabbed his phone and his keys. You know what? Fine. You want to do this? We'll do this. But don't come crying to me when you can't pay your rent in some crappy apartment. He stormed toward the door, then turned back. You're making a huge mistake. You'll never find anyone better than me. Naomi met his eyes. I already have. It was a lie, she wasn't seeing anyone, but Trevor didn't need to know that. His face twisted with confusion and rage. He slammed the door on his way out. Naomi listened to his car peel out of the driveway. Then she pulled out her phone and called her moving company. I need you to come tomorrow morning. I'm relocating to my penthouse. That night, she packed her personal belongings. Clothes, photos from before Trevor, her grandmother's jewelry, important documents. She left behind everything they'd bought together. She didn't need any of it. By dawn, the moving truck arrived. Professional movers loaded her boxes efficiently. Naomi took one last look at the house she'd been paying for while Trevor thought he was the provider. Then she locked the door and left her keys on the kitchen counter. The penthouse was on the 20th floor of her newest building, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Modern furniture, a chef's kitchen, a master suite with a bathroom bigger than most bedrooms. This was hers. Actually hers. Trevor got served with divorce papers at his office that Monday. According to Jerome, who still had contacts at Trevor's company, he'd thrown the papers across the room and stormed into his boss's office demanding time off. He was denied. He called Naomi 73 times that day. She blocked his number. He showed up at her old address that evening, the house she'd left. He pounded on the door, but she wasn't there. A neighbor told him she'd moved out. Trevor's confusion must have been spectacular. He tried her office. Security wouldn't let him past the lobby. Finally, he sent an email. Naomi, please. We need to talk about the settlement. Be reasonable. We can work this out. Naomi forwarded the email to Patricia without responding. He has no idea what's coming, does he? Patricia said during their phone call. None, Naomi confirmed. Good, Patricia said. Let's keep it that way until the court date. The settlement conference happened 3 weeks after Trevor was served. He walked into Patricia's office expecting a negotiation. Instead, he got a demolition. Patricia's conference room was pristine. Glass table, leather chairs, walls lined with law books. Trevor sat across from Naomi with his attorney, a young guy named Craig who looked fresh out of law school and completely overwhelmed. Let's get started, Patricia said, opening a leather portfolio. My client is seeking a clean dissolution of marriage with division of assets according to the prenuptial agreement signed in 2016. Craig cleared his throat. My client believes the prenuptial agreement should be renegotiated. 7 years of marriage entitles him to. Your client is entitled to nothing, Patricia interrupted smoothly. The prenuptial agreement is ironclad. It was reviewed by independent counsel before signing. Your client insisted on it, actually. She slid a document across the table. His email to Ms. Mitchell, dated March 2016, "We should both protect our assets in case one of us becomes more successful." He was quite adamant. Trevor's jaw tightened. "I didn't think she'd actually use it against me." "That's not how legal contracts work," Patricia said. "Now let's review the assets. The marital home at 847 Birchwood Drive." "That's half mine," Trevor said quickly. Patricia smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "Actually, it's not. Ms. Mitchell has been solely responsible for the mortgage payments for the past 2 years. We have bank statements proving this." It produced another stack of papers. "You believed you were contributing, but your deposits went into a separate savings account. The mortgage was paid from Ms. Mitchell's personal funds." Trevor's face went red. "That's not possible. I watched her pay the bills." "You watched her manage finances," Patricia corrected. "You never actually verified where the money came from. The house is Ms. Mitchell's separate property. You have 30 days to vacate." 30 days? Where am I supposed to go? "That's not our concern," Patricia said. "Moving on, joint credit card debt totaling $23,000. Craig jumped in looking relieved. "That should be split equally." "Normally, yes," Patricia agreed. "However, we've documented that Mr. Mitchell accrued this debt through an extramarital affair. Hotel rooms, gifts, dinners, all for his mistress, Ms. Amber Rodriguez." She slid photos across the table. "Adultery negates his claim to equal debt division. Ms. Mitchell has already paid off these cards. Mr. Mitchell will reimburse her the full amount. $23,000. Trevor stood up. "This is insane. You can't." "Sit down, Mr. Mitchell," Patricia said calmly. "We're not finished." Craig put a hand on Trevor's arm, urging him back into his seat. Trevor sat, his face a mixture of rage and panic. "Bank accounts," Patricia continued. "Ms. Mitchell will retain her personal accounts. The joint checking account, currently holding $1,200, will be split equally." "That's it," Trevor said. $600? "You've been spending considerably more than you've been earning," Patricia noted. "Ms. Mitchell covered the shortfall. You're fortunate she's not seeking reimbursement for years of financial support." Trevor looked at Naomi for the first time since entering the room. "You're really doing this? You're going to leave me with nothing?" Naomi's expression didn't change. "You left yourself with nothing. Your retirement account remains yours," Patricia told Trevor. "Approximately $41,000. Ms. Mitchell has no claim to it." "What about her retirement?" Trevor demanded. "Ms. Mitchell's retirement accounts are her separate property, established before the marriage. The prenuptial agreement is clear on this." Trevor turned to Craig desperately. "Do something." Craig looked at his notes, then at the prenuptial agreement, then at Patricia's evidence. "Mr. Mitchell, she's right. The agreement you signed protects her separate assets. And the affair, it compromises your position significantly. This is because I cheated? One mistake and she gets everything?" 8 months isn't a mistake," Naomi said quietly. "It's a choice you made every single day." Trevor's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, Amber calling again. He declined the call. "There's one more thing," Patricia said. "Ms. Mitchell is willing to waive the $23,000 debt reimbursement on one condition." Trevor leaned forward, grasping at hope. "What condition?" "You sign these papers today and never contact Ms. Mitchell again. No calls, no texts, no emails, no showing up at her home or workplace. A clean break." "And if I don't agree?" "Then we go to court where all of this becomes public record," Patricia said. "Your employer will learn you violated company policy by having an affair with a subordinate. Ms. Rodriguez is a receptionist. You're in management. That's a fireable offense. Your friends and family will learn the details of your infidelity. And you'll still end up with the same settlement, but you'll owe the $23,000 plus legal fees." Craig whispered something to Trevor. Trevor closed his eyes, defeated. "Where do I sign?" he asked. Patricia slid the divorce decree across the table. Trevor signed with shaking hands. Naomi signed her name next to his. Calm, steady, final. "The court will finalize this in 60 days, Patricia said. "Mr. Mitchell, you have 30 days to vacate the property. Ms. Mitchell will not be present during your move. Leave your keys on the kitchen counter when you're done." Trevor stood without another word and walked out. Craig gathered his papers and followed, apologizing to Patricia for wasting her time. When they were gone, Patricia turned to Naomi. "How do you feel?" "Free," Naomi said. And she meant it. 3 months after the divorce was finalized, Naomi sat in a conference room at the Chicago Hilton, surrounded by real estate developers and investors. The National Commercial Real Estate Summit was the biggest industry event of the year, and Hartley Holdings had been invited to present. Naomi stood at the podium, a slideshow behind her showing her portfolio, 8 properties now worth $45 million combined. She wore a navy blue suit, her natural hair in elegant locks, her confidence radiating through the room. "Affordable housing isn't just good ethics," she told the audience. "It's good business. The demand is there. The need is there. And investors who recognize this early will dominate the market for decades." The applause was genuine. After her presentation, at least a dozen people approached her with business cards and partnership proposals. One of them was Darius Whitmore. He was tall, maybe 6'3", with dark brown skin, a closely trimmed beard touched with gray, and eyes that actually focused when he listened. He wore an expensive suit but no wedding ring. "Impressive presentation," he said, extending his hand. Darius Whitmore, CEO of Whitmore Development Group. Naomi knew the name. Whitmore Development was a national firm worth billions, specializing in large-scale mixed-use properties. "Thank you," she said, shaking his hand. "I'm familiar with your work. The Renaissance Plaza in Atlanta is stunning." "You've been there?" "I studied it. The way you integrated affordable units with luxury condos without segregating them, brilliant." Darius smiled. "Most people focus on the luxury side. You're the first person at this conference who mentioned the affordable units." They talked for 20 minutes, discussing zoning challenges, financing structures, and community impact. Naomi found herself relaxed, genuinely engaged. Darius wasn't trying to impress her or compete with her. He asked real questions and listened to her answers. "Have you thought about expanding beyond residential?" he asked. "I'm looking at commercial properties," Naomi admitted. "But my focus is creating stable communities. Residential gives me that foundation." "Smart," Darius said. "Would you be interested in consulting on a project I'm developing? Mixed-use property in Detroit. I could use someone with your perspective." "Consulting or partnership?" "Partnership," Darius said without hesitation. "I don't need a consultant. I need a partner who actually cares about the communities we're building in." Naomi considered it. "Send me the details. I'll review them." They exchanged contact information. As Naomi walked away, Simone appeared at her side, grinning. "Was that Darius Whitmore?" Simone whispered. "Yes." "The Darius Whitmore? Billionaire developer? The man who's been on the cover of Forbes 3 times." "I don't read Forbes," Naomi said dryly. "Well, he was definitely interested. And I don't just mean in business." "Simone, please." But over the next few weeks, Naomi found herself communicating with Darius regularly. He sent the Detroit project details, a $200 million development with residential, retail, and community spaces. The numbers were solid. The mission aligned with hers. They scheduled calls to discuss it. Those calls often ran long, veering from business into personal territory. Naomi learned Darius was divorced, had been for 5 years. He had 2 daughters in college. He'd built his company from nothing, starting with a single apartment building 30 years ago. "Sounds familiar," Naomi said during one call. "Your story?" Darius asked. "My grandmother started small too. She taught me that you don't need to start with millions. You just need to start." "Your ex-husband," Darius said carefully. "Did he support your business?" Naomi laughed, a bitter sound. "He didn't know about it. He thought I was just an accountant living paycheck to paycheck." "How is that possible?" "I kept it separate. Turned out to be a wise decision when he decided to cheat on me with a receptionist." "His loss," Darius said quietly. "I mean that." Something in his tone made Naomi's heart skip. She changed the subject back to the Detroit project. But Darius kept finding reasons to call. He sent her articles he thought she'd find interesting. He asked her opinion on deals he was considering. And eventually, he asked if she'd have dinner with him when he was in town next month. "Business dinner?" Naomi asked. "Does it have to be?" Darius replied. Naomi smiled, sitting alone in her penthouse office. "No, it doesn't have to be." They had dinner at a quiet Italian restaurant. Darius wore jeans and a sweater. No suit, no pretense. Naomi wore a simple black dress. They talked for 3 hours about everything except real estate. Darius told her about his daughters, Zoe and Brielle. How proud he was that they'd both chosen careers in social work instead of following him into development. How hard divorce had been, but how necessary. My ex-wife wanted me to stay small, he explained. She was uncomfortable with success. Every time the company grew, she'd say I was changing, becoming someone she didn't recognize. Eventually I realized she didn't want me to grow. She wanted me to stay the same person I was at 25. That's not fair, Naomi said. No. But leaving wasn't easy. I still felt guilty for years. Do you now? No, Darius said. Now I'm grateful. I get to build something meaningful. I get to be the father my daughters deserve. And I get to have dinners like this with incredible women who actually understand ambition. Naomi felt her cheeks warm. That's very smooth. I mean it, Darius said, meeting her eyes. You're remarkable, Naomi. Not just what you've built, though that's impressive as hell, but who you are. The way you talk about your mission, your grandmother, your community. That's rare. They left the restaurant and walked through the city, talking until midnight. When Darius walked Naomi to her car, he didn't try to kiss her. He just smiled and said, "Can we do this again?" "Yes," Naomi said. "We can." Over the next 6 months they built something real. Darius flew in every few weeks. Naomi visited him in Detroit for the project launch. They were careful, taking things slow, both having been burned before. But Naomi found herself thinking about him when he wasn't around. Found herself smiling when his name appeared on her phone. Found herself imagining a future that looked nothing like her past. And for the first time since her divorce, she felt genuinely happy. Trevor's life fell apart in stages, like a building collapsing floor by floor. The first blow came when he moved in with Amber. He'd expected sympathy, romance, a fresh start. Instead, he got a cramped one-bedroom apartment in a complex that smelled like old carpet and disappointment. "This is temporary," he told Amber, carrying boxes up 3 flights of stairs. "Once I get back on my feet, we'll get somewhere nicer." Amber looked around the apartment with barely concealed disgust. "How long is temporary?" "I don't know. A few months maybe." "A few months?" Her voice rose. "Trevor, I didn't leave my apartment to move into this dump." "You didn't leave anything," Trevor snapped. "Your landlord evicted you for late rent. That's why you're here." The first fight happened that night. And the second. And by the end of the week, they'd established a pattern of constant bickering. The second blow came at work. Trevor's boss, a stern woman named Janet, called him into her office 2 weeks after the divorce was finalized. "We need to discuss your relationship with Amber Rodriguez," Janet said, her expression neutral but her tone ice cold. Trevor's stomach dropped. "What about it?" "You're in management. She's a subordinate. That's a violation of company policy regarding workplace relationships." We weren't," Trevor stammered. Janet slid a printed email across her desk. It was from Amber to a coworker, dated 4 months ago. "Trevor and I are going to that new restaurant downtown tonight. Don't tell anyone, lol." Ms. Rodriguez forwarded this to her personal email, which she accessed on a company computer, Janet explained. IT flagged it during a routine audit. Further investigation revealed dozens of similar emails, text messages sent during work hours, and security footage of you two in the parking garage. "Janet, I can explain." "You violated policy for 8 months, Mr. Mitchell. You used company time and resources to conduct a personal affair. That's grounds for immediate termination." "You're firing me?" "No," Janet said. "But you're being demoted. You'll return to a sales associate position with a 40% pay cut. Consider it mercy." Trevor left her office in shock. 40%. His salary dropped from $75,000 to $45,000 in one conversation. When he told Amber that night, she stared at him like he'd grown a second head. "$45,000? She repeated. "That's it. It's temporary until I find something better." "When?" "I don't know, Amber. I'm doing my best." "Your best sucks," she said, grabbing her purse. "I'm going out." She went out a lot after that. Sometimes she came home smelling like cologne that wasn't Trevor's. He didn't ask. He was afraid of the answer. The third blow came when Trevor drove past Naomi's old apartment building, the one she'd moved into after leaving their house. He'd looked up her address in the divorce papers. He wanted to see where she was living, wanted to confirm she was struggling like he'd predicted. Instead, he saw her name on a bronze placard near the entrance, Hartley Holdings, LC, property owner. Trevor parked and stared at that placard for 10 minutes. She owned the building. His ex-wife owned an entire apartment building. He went home and searched Hartley Holdings online. The results made his blood run cold. news articles, business profiles, a website showing 8 properties, apartment buildings, commercial spaces, a shopping plaza. The company's stated value, $42 million. Trevor's hands shook as he clicked through photos of Naomi at industry conferences, cutting ribbons at grand openings, shaking hands with city officials. In every photo she looked powerful, confident, successful. She'd been a millionaire their entire marriage. She'd built a real estate empire while he thought she was just working late at her accounting job. "What are you looking at?" Amber asked, peering over his shoulder. "My ex-wife apparently owns a real estate company worth millions." Amber was quiet for a long moment. Then, "And you cheated on her with me?" "I didn't know," Trevor shouted. "You're an idiot," Amber said flatly. "You had a millionaire wife and you threw it away for me? A receptionist making $32,000 a year? I loved you." "No," Amber said, her voice cold. "You loved the idea of me. You loved that I made you feel important. But guess what? You're not important, Trevor. You're a middle-aged guy with a mediocre job and no money. And I'm done." She started packing that night. By morning she was gone. She'd left a note. "Tyrell from accounting has his own place and a decent car. Good luck." Trevor sat alone in his shabby apartment, surrounded by unpaid bills and broken dreams. He'd lost everything. His wife, his home, his job status, his girlfriend. All because he'd thought he deserved better than Naomi. He pulled out his phone and scrolled to her blocked number. He'd saved it under a different contact name to get around the block. His fingers hovered over the call button. What would he say? "I'm sorry? I made a mistake? Please take me back?" He knew what she'd say. Nothing. She'd hang up. Or worse, she'd laugh. Trevor put the phone down. He couldn't call her. He'd burned that bridge and danced on the ashes. All he could do now was live with the consequences of his choices. And watch from a distance as his ex-wife became everything he'd never believed she could be. 1 year after the divorce, Naomi stood on a stage in front of 200 people, investors, community leaders, journalists, and announced the public launch of Hartley Holdings. The event took place in the ballroom of the Westwood Hotel, one of the city's most prestigious venues. Screens behind Naomi displayed images of her properties, community impact statistics, and her grandmother's photo. Dorothy Hartley, the woman who'd started it all. "My grandmother taught me that wealth isn't just about money," Naomi said into the microphone. "It's about what you build, who you help, and what you leave behind. Hartley Holdings isn't just a real estate company. It's a legacy." She detailed her plans. 10 new affordable housing developments over the next 5 years, partnerships with local schools to provide financial literacy programs, and a scholarship fund for young women pursuing careers in business and real estate. "We're committing $50 million to these initiatives," Naomi announced. The room erupted in applause. Cameras flashed. Reporters scribbled notes. After the presentation, Naomi did interviews with 3 major business publications. She talked about her grandmother, her vision, and her strategy. She didn't mention Trevor once. He wasn't part of her story anymore. Darius was there, standing at the back of the room, watching with obvious pride. When the reporters finally left her alone, he approached with a champagne flute. "You were incredible," he said, handing her the glass. "I was terrified," Naomi admitted. "Didn't show. You looked like you've been doing this your whole life." "Maybe I have," Naomi said. "I just didn't know it yet." They clinked glasses. Around them, investors and community leaders mingled, networking, making deals. Simone was in her element, schmoozing with potential partners. Patricia Okonkwo was there too, having invested in Hartley Holdings herself. "This is your moment," Darius said quietly. "How does it feel?" "Like I'm finally exactly where I'm supposed to be." The launch made waves. By the end of the week, Naomi's face was on the cover of Regional Business magazine with the headline, "The Hidden Millionaire, How One Woman Built a Real Estate Empire in Secret." The article told her story, or the part she chose to share. Her grandmother's legacy. Her strategic investments. Her vision for affordable housing. The writer called her a force of nature in designer heels. Trevor saw the magazine at a newsstand. He was walking home from his sales job, exhausted and broke, when the cover caught his eye. Naomi's face, confident and beautiful, staring out at him. He bought the magazine and read it on a bench outside a coffee shop he couldn't afford to enter. Every word was a knife. When asked about her personal life, Ms. Hartley Mitchell, who has reverted to her maiden name, spoke warmly about her late grandmother but declined to discuss her recent divorce. "That chapter is closed," she said. "I'm focused on building something that matters." The article mentioned her partnership with Whitmore Development Group. It showed photos of Naomi and Darius at the Detroit project groundbreaking, standing close, both smiling. Trevor's new girlfriend, a cashier at a grocery store where he shopped, walked by and saw him reading. "Isn't that your ex-wife?" she asked. "Yeah," Trevor said numbly. "She's really successful." "What does she do?" "She owns a real estate empire worth $50 million. His girlfriend stared at him. "And you divorced her?" "She divorced me," Trevor corrected. "Why?" Trevor couldn't answer that. Couldn't admit he'd cheated, that he'd thrown away the best thing in his life for someone who'd left him the moment his money dried up. "It's complicated," he finally said. His girlfriend shrugged and kept walking. Trevor sat on that bench for another hour, reading the article over and over, torturing himself with what he'd lost. Naomi never thought about Trevor anymore. She had no idea he'd seen the magazine or that he spent his nights scrolling through news articles about Hartley Holdings, watching his ex-wife's success from a distance. She was too busy actually living, building, growing, creating something bigger than revenge, bigger than anger, bigger than anything Trevor had ever imagined she could be. And in the quiet moments, when she and Darius talked late into the night about their next project or their dreams for the future, Naomi realized something profound. The best revenge really was living well. She'd won. Not because Trevor had lost, but because she'd found herself. 2 years after the divorce, Naomi received an invitation to the annual Youth Education Gala, the city's most prestigious charity event. 500 guests, black tie dress code, and an audience full of the region's most influential people. Hartley Holdings had been asked to be a presenting sponsor. Naomi would give a speech about her new initiative, building educational centers in underserved neighborhoods. She wore a custom gown, deep emerald green with delicate beading that caught the light when she moved. Her locks were styled in an elegant updo. Diamond earrings, her grandmother's, sparkled at her ears. Darius arrived at her penthouse to pick her up. He wore a classic black tuxedo and couldn't take his eyes off her. "You look stunning," he said. "You clean up pretty well yourself," Naomi teased. They'd been officially together for 6 months now, taking their time, building something real. His daughters had visited last month, and Naomi had taken them to brunch. Zoe and Brielle were smart, kind young women who'd welcomed Naomi warmly. No pressure, no expectations, just genuine connection. The gala was held at the Grand Ballroom downtown. Chandeliers glittered overhead. A string quartet played classical music. Waiters circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Naomi mingled with donors, city council members, and fellow business leaders. She'd become comfortable in these spaces, not because she was trying to fit in, but because she belonged here. What she didn't know was that Trevor was there too. After losing his sales job 6 months ago, Trevor had taken work wherever he could find it. Tonight, he was part of the catering staff, a server carrying trays of champagne through the crowd, invisible to the wealthy guests. He'd cut his hair shorter, trying to look professional. His white server's jacket was crisp but cheap. He'd gained weight from stress and poor eating habits. At 35, he looked 45. Trevor recognized several people from his old life, colleagues who'd moved up while he'd crashed down. They didn't recognize him in his server's uniform. He was part of the background now. Then he saw Naomi. She stood near the stage talking with the mayor. Even from across the room, she was radiant, confident, happy. Nothing like the woman he'd left crying in their living room, except she'd never cried. He'd imagined she would, but she never had. Beside her stood a tall man in an expensive tuxedo. Trevor recognized him from the magazine article. Darius Whitmore, billionaire developer. The man put his hand on the small of Naomi's back, a gesture so natural and comfortable it was clear they were together. Trevor's hands shook. Champagne glasses rattled on his tray. "Careful," his supervisor hissed, walking past. Trevor steadied himself and moved through the crowd, serving drinks, trying not to look at Naomi. But he couldn't help it. She was magnetic. The program began. Naomi was introduced as the keynote speaker. She walked onto the stage to enthusiastic applause, confident and poised. "Good evening," she said into the microphone, her voice clear and strong. 2 years ago, I made a promise to myself and to my late grandmother. I promised to build something that mattered. Not just financially successful, but meaningful. Something that would change lives. Trevor stood in the service area, watching from the shadows. "Tonight, I'm honored to announce Hartley Holdings' largest commitment yet, a $50 million investment in educational centers across our city. These centers will provide after-school programs, college prep courses, financial literacy training, and career counseling, All completely free to students who need them most. The crowd erupted in applause. People stood. Naomi smiled, gracious and humble. Education changed my life, she continued. My grandmother, Dorothy Hartley, made sure I had opportunities she never had. She taught me that wealth is a responsibility. We don't just build buildings, we build futures. More applause. Trevor felt sick. $50 million. Naomi was pledging $50 million while he was serving champagne for $15 an hour. After her speech, Naomi returned to her seat. Darius kissed her cheek, proud. They held hands under the table. Trevor continued serving. He moved through the crowd like a ghost, offering champagne to people who didn't see him. At one point he had to refill glasses at the table next to Naomi's. He was maybe 10 feet away. That was perfect, Darius was saying. The foundation is going to be incredible. I hope so, Naomi said. My grandmother would be proud. She would be, Darius agreed. And for what it's worth, I'm proud too. What you're building, it's remarkable. Naomi squeezed his hand. We're building it together now. Trevor moved away before they could notice him. He spent the rest of the evening avoiding that section of the ballroom. When the gala ended, guests filed out slowly. Trevor and the other servers began clearing tables. He was collecting empty glasses when he heard her voice behind him. Excuse me. Trevor turned. Naomi stood there, elegant in her emerald gown, looking directly at him. His mouth went dry. Naomi. I think you dropped this, she said, holding out a $20 bill. Trevor looked at the money, confused. He hadn't dropped anything. It's a tip, Naomi said quietly. For good service. Their eyes met. Trevor searched her face for anger, for satisfaction, for anything. But Naomi's expression was neutral, not cruel, not kind. Just done. She placed the 20 on his tray and walked away. Darius waited for her by the door, holding her coat. They left together, disappearing into the night. Trevor stood holding the tray, the $20 bill feeling like it weighed 1,000 pounds. She'd recognized him. She'd known exactly who he was. And she'd treated him the same way he treated her during their divorce, like he was nothing. Like he didn't matter enough to hate. That hurt worse than anything else possibly could. Trevor finished his shift and walked home to his studio apartment. He passed a newsstand and saw the latest issue of Business Monthly. Naomi's face was on the cover again. Hartley Holdings CEO pledges $50 million to education. He kept walking. There was nothing else he could do. Meanwhile, Naomi and Darius arrived at her penthouse. She kicked off her heels and sank onto the couch with a satisfied sigh. You were amazing tonight, Darius said, sitting beside her. Thank you for being there, Naomi said. It means everything. Nowhere else I'd rather be. He paused. Did you know your ex-husband was working that event? Naomi nodded. I saw him early in the evening. Jerome still keeps tabs on him occasionally. He lost another job a few months ago. How do you feel about that? Naomi considered the question. 2 years ago, she might have felt satisfaction at Trevor's struggles. Now she felt nothing. I feel free, she said finally. He's not my problem anymore. He's not my responsibility. He made his choices. I made mine. No regrets. Only that I didn't leave sooner. Naomi smiled. But then again, if I had, I might not have built all this. I might not have met you. Darius pulled her close. Everything happens for a reason? Maybe. Or maybe we just make the best of what happens to us. They sat in comfortable silence, looking out at the city lights below. Naomi thought about her grandmother, about the trust fund, about the empire she'd built from pain and determination. She thought about Trevor serving champagne in the background while she pledged $50 million to change lives. She'd won. Completely, totally, absolutely won. Not because Trevor had lost, but because she'd become someone who didn't need revenge. Someone who'd turned betrayal into purpose. Someone who'd built a legacy that would outlast any marriage. Naomi fell asleep that night in Darius's arms, in her penthouse that she owned, in a life she'd created entirely on her own terms. And in that moment she realized the truth. The best revenge wasn't making Trevor suffer.